going on, family? So I'm going to briefly touch on polio because it's been in the news. I'm going to speak about the recent cases that have been found, and I'm also going to relate it to how this is due to failed policies surrounding the pandemic and how this was predicted as far back as 2020. So let's just go ahead and get into it. So recently, there has been a case found in Rockland, New York, from an unvaccinated individual. It's also the polio virus has also been found in the wastewater of New York, and it's also been found in the wastewater of London. Now, they're saying that for every one case of the paralytic polio observed, there may be hundreds of other people infected because it is highly contagious, but most people show no symptoms at all, and some people show little symptoms. Now, in London, they discovered it in London's wastewater between February and July, and they said it had a few sufficient mutations to be classified as a vaccine-derived polio virus. This is what the British health officials said. Now, polio, there's 3 strains of it. So there's the polio virus, polio strain for types 2 and 3 have, for the most part, been eradicated. Now, polio virus type 1 is the one that we're still dealing with around the world. And in Afghanistan and Pakistan specifically, it's endemic. Now, what is polio? So polio is a disabling and life-threatening disease caused by the polio virus. Most people who are infected with the polio virus will not have any visible symptoms. 1 out of 4 will have flu-like symptoms. Now, a smaller portion are going to develop those more severe symptoms. I'm sure you've seen the photos from the 1940s, the 1950s, people in wheelchairs, things like that, because polio is actually found all the way going back to ancient Egypt. There is a hieroglyph that shows a gentleman with a very thin leg, and he's being held up for support. So now, when polio is most severe, that's when it affects the brain and the spinal cord. It does this in two ways. So meningitis. This happens in between 1 to 5, so 1 to 5% out of 100 people who are infected, and also paralysis, which can happen from 1 out of 200 people or 1 out of 2,000 people, depending on the virus type. Now, polio in the United States, specifically in the late 1940s, was very severe. There was a period of time where it was disabling close to 35,000 people per year. During this time, the governments, they were restricting travel and commerce between cities. They had also instituted quarantines just because how serious the situation was. Now, it was very feared. In the 1950s, before the vaccines were available, these cases were just sporadic. They were popping up everywhere. But there was the introduction of the vaccine. So there was the introduction of a vaccine in 1955 and in 1963. That last vaccine in 1963 really helped to eliminate most of the cases because polio is not something that can be cured. It can only be prevented. And it really can't be treated that well. So in the United States, there's been no cases of the polio virus called by the wild polio virus. So that'll be type 1, which have originated in the United States. Now, there have been cases that have come into the United States from travelers. The last one that I could find on file was 1993. They basically say, there's no cure for it, but it's highly contagious. It's spread through human waste. It also can be spread through saliva. So one of the things they suggest that people do is you wash your hands, same thing, clean yourself. But the vaccines have been effective, over 99% effective at protecting children from the virus. Normally, how they do this is that they provide children with 4 different vaccinations over a period of time. And thanks to that vaccination, the cases have just dramatically fallen down. They've fallen since 1988, from an estimated 350 cases then to 460 cases reported worldwide since 2013. And this is done from a global effort. Now, I wanted you all to look at this article. This is from April 9th, 2020. It says polio, measles, and other diseases set to surge as COVID-19 forces suspensions of vaccination campaigns. So this was predicted that polio and measles and things like that as a response due to policies from health organizations and local governments and politicians, that there was going to be some diseases that we had mostly eradicated around the world start to spring up. We've seen that recently with monkeypox in the news. Measles was in the news. It hasn't really been in the news, but now polio's taken its place. So they were saying that this was a devil's choice. They said there was a dilemma facing global health organizations over the past few weeks. This was in 2020. So these health organizations could either continue to support mass vaccination campaigns in poor countries and risk inadvertently helping to spread COVID, or recommend their suspension, inevitably triggering an upsurge of many other infectious diseases. Of course, they chose to do the latter. The Global Polio Eradication Initiative on the 24th of March recommended suspending polio vaccination campaigns until the second half of the year. 2 days later, the World Health Organization Strategic Advisory Group of Experts on Immunization, known as SAGE, issued a broader call recommending that all preventative mass vaccination campaigns for other diseases be postponed. Quotes, any mass campaigns would go against the idea of social distancing. That's what they stated. So as a result of this, because we've been doing such a good global effort of eradicating polio and keeping up on the vaccinations, especially in these underdeveloped nations and poorer countries who need that outside help, polio started to pop up. I found an article from March in Malawi. And remember that when they find one case, so they found it in this child, that means that there's 100 other people that are infected, but everybody's going to have symptoms differently. Some are going to have those debilitating symptoms. Some are going to have no visible symptoms. Some are going to have flu-like symptoms. We also saw this with measles. So they stopped the polio vaccinations. They stopped the measles vaccinations. They said 23 countries have already suspended their measles campaigns. And as a result, 78 million children will miss out on the vaccine. In poor countries, the virus can kill 3 to 6% of those who are infected. This is from the World Health Organization, with malnourished children especially at risk. Measles infected an estimated 10 million and killed 140,000 in 2018. So, as we can see from what is going on, polio has started to show themselves. It's become news because it started to show up in Western countries. But I will link articles below where these cases have been popping up in underdeveloped countries, especially due to the policies that we enacted with COVID. So when you divert all your resources and ignore the other issues, the other health issues that we have, this hurts people. And this is when these diseases that were mostly eradicated, like monkeypox, like polio, how we've been doing so well with measles, can start to find a foothold again and begin to spread. So I just wanted to give you all a little bit of information on this, give you a brief idea of the history, what's going on with the virus, and show you that people have been warning about this since 2020. All right, I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.